are people who are saying, I don't want to be in a traffic jam for 2 hours of my day. I want to be surrounded by trees. These are people who are saying, I don't want 10-minute delivery food orders. I rather cook my food myself. And these are people who are saying, hello, hustle culture. We are going to say bye-bye to you. So I'm very excited to have 3 people over here who are going to sort of share with us what exactly does it take to live that life, not just for themselves, financially, and for their family. So I'm quite kicked about this. Let me first go straight away to Neelesh Misra. इनसे बात करने के पहले I have to sort of get that voice. Thankfully, my throat is sort of helping in that one, but goes down slow a little bit. Neelesh started Gao Connection and wanted to sort of go back and leave the city life, leave a very, very thriving career to get a more quiet environment around him. I really want to understand what made you make that move. Was it a burnout point? Or was there a moment when you said, ab bahut ho gaya?
As a journalist, I had extensively covered rural India with both its challenges and its achievement, and always used to wonder why isn't this documented. And my parents had already spent close to 40 years then running a school in a village, so my Gao connection had been there since a very early childhood. And when I started Gao Connection, I used to live in Bombay, and my team, the word startup was not in vogue in India at that time. This was 2009-10. I didn't know how to raise funds, so I sold my house. I'm still as foolish about these things. But I realized that it was a farce, that I would be living in Bombay and trying to create a voice for rural India. And one day I asked my wife, my wife asked me, where is home? And I still tell her, like, tum bhai ek sentence mat bola karo, duniya ulat palat ho jati hai. And that really led to us taking this decision that, okay, if that is where work is, then that is where home is. And then in 2018, of course, well into the Gao Connection journey, we created a home there in our village, and my daughter, who was then 3 years old, and my wife asked me, signboard kya lagana hai? And I said, let's call it what we feel when we are here. Let's call it slow. So my home is called Slow. And then the slow interview started, and then this whole conversation around a slow life started, in my life. And then I realized that when I left Bombay, I thought that I've been content. I've never sought fame. I never thought I would get fame, but it happened, and then I was fairly content going back. And I thought कि एक हाईवे है और वहाँ से एक पगडंडी जा रही है और मैं.
But ये कैसे हो जाता है, नीलेश? कैसे आप content हो जाते हैं अपनी life से? I really want to understand the magic behind it. I really want to understand how do you sort of take that turn? Which is why I see Luke also smiling there, because Luke and I have had so many conversations earlier where I've asked him, is it even possible, the philosophy, Luke, that you talk about all the time, of living intentionally, living slow, as what Neelesh calls it, is it even possible in today's day and age, in, say, in a place like Delhi?
It's possible, and it's also mandatory. Because today most of my patients are sick because of chronic stress, sleep deprivation. So if we're not going to slow down, our bodies are going to slow us down. Disease is going to slow us down. Now, while it may be absolutely fantastic to move back to the village life, better air, connected to nature, which is what most people need, which is why we find ourselves running away from cities, weekend breaks, holidays. It's a natural sign that as human beings, we want to be connected deeper with nature. The moment we start separating ourselves from nature, that's what you term as disease. That's what you term as mental health issues and emotional health issues. People struggle to fall asleep in a city. But you go back to a village, you sleep automatically, you wake up in fewer hours, more fresher. So it is possible. It depends on our choices. And like you beautifully started off with dreams. What are our dreams? Are our dreams fueled by what we see on Instagram, venture capitalists, the world out there? Or is it really fueled on what we really want as individuals? And all of us go through that. I moved out of Goa, a village, to the city to chase a dream, which were other people's dreams. But eventually you find out that we all have to go back to nature, and the sooner that we do, the better it is. Some people manage within a city life beautifully. They learn to relax, they learn to de-stress, they learn to calm down. But we can't separate ourselves from nature.
We can't and we shouldn't. I think that's rightly put. But Shweta, how did you do this? So Shweta, for everybody who doesn't know already, I don't think it needs an introduction, has a thriving career. I'm trying to imagine your life in Bombay, surrounded, being in the spotlight, projects after projects, and one day you say, "Bas ho gaya. I want to go to Goa." And this, mind you, was before the pandemic. So again, tipping point.
So like we were having a conversation some time back that we now, when we live in Goa, we have this little term called the pre-pandemic immigrants and the post-pandemic immigrants. And we joke about it. So yes, I am one of the pre's. Well, I've spent most of my life in Mumbai, yes. I came from the film entertainment industry where everything revolved around that chaos and the thriving energy of the big city, you know, going to auditions and screen tests and the anxiety of whether did I book the job or did I not book the job. So all that kind of was something that I lived with. And something in me about 10 years ago shifted. And to be honest, I think it was very natural and organic. I was becoming a mom. And I wanted to choose a different kind of life, you know, a life which had more space, a life with more pauses, and possibilities to redefine success on my own terms, you know. So Goa happened, and it was wonderful. You know, from literally, this was supposed to be a sabbatical, which very quickly turned into reinvention. You know, being in front of the camera all the time, I started building things literally from ground up. And I'm very lucky to have a wonderful husband who supported. And with my business partner, we started a restaurant. I started a salon, curated a couple of pop-up markets, turned my creative energy towards being a creator on social media, where that became a voice. So basically experimented with new ideas just so that this could bloom into a more quieter, intentional setting. So, you know, it wasn't easy, but I felt it just came very organically. And I guess that shift was, जब आप माँ बनते हो, आप सोचना शुरू करते कि अच्छा ये आपकी जिंदगी थी, क्या आपको आपके बच्चे को भी यही जिंदगी देनी है? So you want to do those little changes, and hopefully things turn different. You know, in that quiet, I feel I found a louder voice. I feel.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely true. When you're bringing up a child, it sort of has a different threshold. I think more and more doctors and people in Delhi today will know this, are recommending that you leave the capital. If you want your kid to have better lungs, I can give prescription today. I can tell you to put air purifiers in your room or wear a 3M mask if required, but that's not life. If you want it to get better, leave. More and more doctors are saying this, but how many of us actually manage to do that? And, you know, something beautiful about what Shweta said and what Luke was also pointing out, that moving back, or this reverse migration in a way, makes you reset your mind about what success is, about what happiness means to you. If today I were to ask you about a change, Neelesh, कि पहले आप क्या सोचते थे और अब आपके ज़हन में क्या जाता है, the idea of success, how has that changed, staying in a remote village where you get to drop Vedahi to school every day without traffic jams?
I don't have Blinkit. I didn't have Amazon. By force, the footprint expanded to me, but I'm very happy I don't have any of those. No, I think that this is absolutely a personality type. But this is not a fringe personality type, let me tell you. So what I was saying earlier, when I moved back and when I started talking about it on social media, I used to use the hashtag life at slow, because slow ghar ka naam tha. मुझे लग रहा था कि एक हाईवे पे हूँ और मैं उतर गया, एक पगडंडी पे चला गया, and I'm making a lonely journey. But as it were, I turned around and there were thousands and thousands of people coming on that path. Because now there were people saying, सर हमारी भी ज़मीन है गांव में, हम भी आपकी तरह रहना चाहते हैं, सर हम भी मूव बैक कर गए, सर जैसा चूल्हा आपका है वैसा चूल्हा हमें भी चाहिए. Suddenly in 2018, when the pandemic had not happened, when this was considered foolhardy, a lot of people started telling me that this was very aspirational actually. A lot of my creative colleagues started saying, संजय मिश्रा आए स्लो इंटरव्यू में, बोले यार अगली बार मैंने अपना स्लो बना लिया है. कुमार विश्वास के मैंने अपना स्लो बना लिया है. So suddenly it started becoming doable that if this guy is managing here, and also absolutely.
I'm sure there are challenges, Neelesh. I'm sure there are challenges. I'm sure you're making choices and you're saying ये नहीं कर पाएंगे. These are things that cannot happen. You said Blinkit nahi hai, Amazon nahi hai. Keep that aside as well.
No, career-wise, I mean, so like you know, Shweta said she started a new journey there. But as a person who had plucked himself out of say Mumbai, where I was writing songs for 50 Bollywood films or the world of storytelling, or it could have be seen as harakiri. But I think I use two words about our work. One is humble audacity, and one is a graceful confidence. I feel that when I chose that life, and then we put 4 cameras out there and started having conversations with film actors and sports persons, and suddenly millions of people started. We realized that hey, there are millions of people for whom this is aspirational, because we were talking about that life. We were not talking about what is your next film. Hey, tell me some good gossip. Those were not the conversations. The conversations were around parenting, around agriculture, around being rooted. So here, it just started. It created these little windows for people to peep in and say, "I want this."
You talk about this being doable. Can I get a quick sort of show of hands on how many people sitting here in this audience actually think they can let go of their life in cities, in metros, to go back and stay in their village? Wow, I'm seeing more and more numbers go up. Wow. So you people, if you had a choice, you would let go and you would go back. Yeah? So what's holding them back is a lot of stuff. Is perhaps not knowing where my child will go to school, is perhaps not knowing what my source of income will be, is perhaps having to wait, not get 5G network maybe, and perhaps having to not, get like instant deliveries and all of that. But look, why is it so important? What I'm hearing from this is that there is a craving, but it is so hard to let go.
See, I think there are two kinds of cravings. Cravings by our conscious mind, like material things that we want in the world. And then there's an unconscious craving which our soul has. And if you look, everyone's gravitating more towards nature. Most people they crave nature because we're part of it. We're not separate from nature, like I said. So most people have that idea that they want to go back. A lot of people say, like I think in Mumbai, they have this saying that I'm resilient. I love Mumbai, which is great. But you have the same amount of people complaining about the quality of air and infrastructure and everything else. So somewhere we like to fool ourselves as human beings.
Send them to Delhi. Whoever is complaining about Mumbai,
we're a little bit better right now. So we'll keep Mumbai right now. No, but I want to go back to the point that you actually spoke about. Of late, our lung patients have increased 3-fold, and we actually prescribe people to change where they live because there is no solution. The steroids don't work anymore. And we are actually prescribing that people, if they have the ability to move out, they move out. And a lot of our lung cancer patients in Delhi and Mumbai actually move to hill stations, they move to Goa, and their recovery is so much better because they have the right environment. So it's extremely important for us to understand that most of us are craving nature in different ways. That's why we're constantly looking at holidays, and that's why you can go to New York, you can go to Paris, you can go for a city holiday, and people come back and say, oh, I need a holiday to recover from this holiday. But you go to a place where there's nature, And you just want to keep going back there over and over again. So
Is this a cyclical sort of a trend? We did see this happen during the pandemic, right? Everybody not able to pay rents, etc., went back, but so many of them did come back to the city. So what happened?
I think some companies wanted people to come back. A lot of people quit their jobs and stayed on. Because as our tech infrastructure improves in villages, like when I had to move back for the pandemic, I couldn't see patients face to face. But thanks to Zoom, everything moved online. So you could have almost everything continue. And it's a choice. Some people love the city life. And I think at different ages, you have those different feelings. But I see a lot of the youth now growing up and they crave nature and they don't want to come to cities. And that's why I hope the infrastructure improves so people have the ability to create the same success within cities from their villages as well.
Where I'm coming at also from why this is cyclical in nature and why a lot of people perhaps had to come back is that many find this conversation, I don't know if that's a nice way of saying it, a little privileged. Many would say that only those who are privileged enough to work from, say, a remote area can do so. So how does one tackle that? Shweta, I'll come to you.
Well, before that, I want to say that the fact that you see why people are coming back to cities, I feel sometimes, and especially out of friends that I know who've come, tried, and living in a smaller town, but then going back home, I guess it's that fear of being irrelevant or that fear of falling behind. यार ये slow paced life मुझे जमेगा कि नहीं जमेगा वो जो डर है that fear I guess is what pulls them back to the big cities, but when then they go back they realize the quality was so much different then. Anyway, coming to that question that you asked, I honestly, can you just say that again? I was just kind of going to...
I was trying to say that not everybody can afford.
Correct.
You know,
it's not true, Sonal. You can. It's, success does not mean sitting in a boardroom and 16 hours of work. That's not how I feel. I feel you can make it. Having said that, maybe 16 hours I don't work that much, but pretty close to that. But I still find the time to come home. To have a meal with my mom, my husband, my daughter. When Arya says, Mama, Aaj, I have this project and I want to do it, I find that time to sit with her, cut those papers and pictures and stick and do that home assignment. That joy, despite of working those 14, 15 hours, even in Goa, even in a smaller town, I still manage to find that time, which I used to find difficult to do back in this big city. I mean, when I was in the big city, I wasn't a mom, I didn't have a daughter, but I still would be exhausted. Like Luke said, people need a holiday after a holiday. Is because when you're working in a big city with everything around, I used to be so exhausted, I had no time for anything. Here in Goa, I run multiple things. I have a salon, I have a restaurant, I do pop-up markets, I am creating content on social media. I am also doing a project. I'm also still acting. I haven't completely given up on that dream because at the end of the day, that is who I am. So I'm not going to let go of that. But juggling all these balls in the air, I've still managed to kind of not drop any. That joy is what never will pull me back to a big city, and I hope I never do.
That's very well said, Shweta. But I want to come to Neelesh on this point. Another challenge that comes to mind, and I'm just thinking of somebody who's listening to this conversation saying, you know what, it's been lurking behind, ये idea बहुत दिनों से आ रहा है, बहुत सोचने करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं पर कर नहीं पा रहे हैं. Because how do you manage financially, number one? And I want to go around to ask you guys this question again. For those with families, today so much of the decisions we make are for our kids. What about education? What about access for them? What about exposure? These are words everybody throws at, right? So how are you managing with your kid?
So after I moved back to my village 3 years ago, I also moved to Goa. And I now divide time between those two villages. And I moved to Goa not for regular reasons. I moved for my daughter, for her growing up, which did not have a, birthday party at the Hyatt. And
why did you choose Goa?
I evaluated everything, all the aspects, not just schooling, but the living conditions, the fact that it was a more cosmopolitan existence, the fact that, because she's grown up in a village with goats and cows. She has no sense of class. She has her friends are from the next village who gift her a radish when, they come. And suddenly in Lucknow, there were birthday parties at the Hyatt, and there were return gifts, and there were, what brand is your shoe, and that's why, of course, later the same people.
This is not even Delhi. This is Lucknow. This is Lucknow, which was too much for you. That's
yeah.
not even Delhi.
And I wanted, I can't protect her from this for forever, but I felt that can I insulate her, and is there a beautiful place here, which it is, where I can still be in a village, I can still have a slow life, and of course I divide time in both places. So I made this choice for my daughter, for her. I mean, I'm not escaping pollution. This is an aspirational embracing of a slower life, and I'm living what I talk about on social. I'm taking a very, tangible step in my life, moving 1,800 kilometers away for that. So, and I mean, my wife and daughter are thrilled. I just travel a lot, so I'm.
Shweta, how are you managing? You don't have FOMO for IB board now?
No, not at all. I'm a person who lives in JOMO. I love the joy of missing out on things, to be honest. It's not FOMO for me. And strangely, we were just talking, and I just realized that you've got all three of us who have Goa connection. This has got nothing to do really with Goa.
Not intentional at all. Not intentional at all, but yeah, go ahead.
So like you asked him, why Goa? To be honest with me, I'll be honest, actually it all started with my mom and dad. This was 2014, and 2012 I got married. I bought my first home with my husband in Goa. And my mom would say, yaar, tum shaadi ke baad ya to tum Bandra mein rehti ho, ya you're traveling and you're doing events and you're away. I hardly get to see you. So I said, Mama, Dada, you know what? There's nothing really left in the city. Why don't you and Dad, and they're retired. I said, move to Goa, and I had already bought a home, so I'd already seen what it is like. I made them move first. And I said, you'll see me more, because she said, ya to tum kaam kar rahe ho, ya to tum Goa bhag jati ho. So I said, now you'll see me more. Then when I got pregnant in 2015, I was like, as a girl, I wanted to have the baby with my mom around. So I said, Mama ke saath, I'll be there, I'll pop the baby and then get back to the city. And I always say ki Arya chose her destiny. My daughter's name is Arya. And I said she chose it because she's a Goa baby. She was born there. And we never came back. One thing led to another organically. We found the space. We started the restaurant. Everything just kind of flowed. So it's not Goa, like you asked. It could have been any other place. It just happened to be there because I made my parents move. And I just feel that sometimes, like I said, success does not have to be the way we think it is, Success does not mean you have to wear a suit and sit in a boardroom. She can sometimes wear chappals, run a cafe by the beach, and redefine success on her own terms. And beautiful. I think, like I said before, in this quiet, in this slow-mo-ness, I found a slightly clearer and louder voice. And I hope I can pass this on to Arya, and I guess a lot of people over here can probably take some things out of that.
Well, hope so too, not so much. Bosses are here, everybody's watching, so let's be very mindful of that. But Luke, closing comments for those who are wondering, कि पहले भी तो लोग जाते थे. मतलब, I'm just trying to think of the time when I was growing up. A typical millennial, the dream was to be in Delhi. The dream was to get out of your town, make a name for yourself. How has it happened that in one generation, the whole thing has flipped? In just one generation, people are saying, you know what, this hustle culture is simply not worth it.
Yeah, because the hustle culture is unnatural. Anything that's unnatural, we start to resist. Anything that we resist brings stress in our life. So going back, I'll give you an example of Goa. I studied in Goa, passed out of Goa, no foreign education. I believe I've done pretty well for myself. At the end of the day, every parent has a choice. Some parents want IB schools, international schools, and that's their choice. But finally in life, it comes down to it doesn't matter what you have or how much you have. What matters is what you do with what you have. So I think, finally, going back to what you spoke about, a privilege. While many people think it's a privilege to choose where you want to live, but health is also a privilege. Family time is a privilege. Nature is a privilege. Life is a privilege. So people define privileges as maybe that, okay, I'll have a fancy car, fancy job, and people get to choose, because at the end of the day, the bitter, ugly truth is everyone has one life. How we choose to live it, wherever we choose to stay, is finally up to us.
Bravo, bravo. Very, very well said. Closing comments. I have to ask from Shweta and Neelesh. Shweta, we'll start with you first. One thing you love about living remotely, and one thing you hate about it.
One thing I love living remotely is I do it on my own terms. I'm not following anybody's directions. It's me. I'm paving my own path. What do I not love about living remote? To be honest, like I said, nothing, because I'm a person who lives in Jomo. I have zero FOMO, so I love living remote.
Neelesh?
What I love is that a slow life, or slow is not a physical place for me, it's a state of mind. I'm asocial, I'm content, generally, I don't like humans. What I dislike is the odd flight connections. I woke up at 4 today, I was grumbling, if there was a way to not come here, I would not have. So, yeah.
Thank you, Neelesh, for taking out the time, going through all that. Thank you so much. Neelesh Misra, Shweta Salve, Lucatino, thank you for paving the way, for showing us a path. This has truly, truly been a pleasure. Thank you all.
Whenever